Welcome to According to Sam, folks. This is episode 430. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's get into it, folks. I have a great podcast for you today. Hope you guys had a good weekend, or a good week. We're getting ready to head into the weekend. I hope you do have a good weekend, and I hope you have had a good week. We've been talking about the third century crises. The third century crises of the United States of America, but we've been relating it to the third century, the crisis of the third century that the Roman Empire faced. And we were looking at the crises, the different crises that the Roman empires faced in their third century crisis, and showing that some of these crises and this crisis, the crises of the third century that the Roman Empire faced, led to the Roman Empire, fragmenting and basically dissolving into where the Roman Empire didn't exist anymore the way that it did at the high point of the Roman Empire, which was Pax Romana. They tried to recreate the Roman Empire. Charlemagne tried to recreate the Roman Empire. Otto, creating the Holy Roman Empire in name, but the Roman Empire was never ever the way that it was prior to the crisis of the third century. And I've been telling you, just like the Romans had their crisis of the third century, most major nations and empires usually last about 200 years. And in that third century is when they start to transform and disintegrate. We've also been relating our talks to the Scottish historian and judge, Alexander Fraser Tyler, who says, amongst other things that he says, he's also says that, that these great nations and empires basically last 200 years. He says that, but he also says a democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government. A democracy will continue to exist up until the time when voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts, largesse, from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always. This is why we're not a democratic. We don't have a democratic system. We don't have a direct democracy system where what the majority want. This is what Alexander Fraser Tyler is saying here, is that from the moment that the majority realize that they can vote themselves largesse, generous gifts from the public treasury, that voters will vote for the candidate that promises the most benefits. We don't have a direct democracy. That's why they want to get rid of the Senate. That's why they want to get rid of the Electoral College. Pete Buttigieg came out again this week for getting rid of the Electoral College. So, I mean, when you say that getting rid of the Electoral College is a fringe idea in the Democratic Party, Pete Buttigieg is at the top of the polls of candidates that they believe could get. Please nominate Pete Buttigieg, people. Please nominate Pete Buttigieg. But yeah, he's up there at the top of the polls in many polls. I mean, that's not fringe. If Pete Buttigieg he's going to be campaigning on that when he campaigns for president in 2028, getting rid of the Electoral College, came out for it. But that's what that's about, to creating a system that is more of a direct democracy where the minority doesn't have any say. And then Alexander Fraser Tyler says from that moment on, once the public realizes that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury, this is the public treasury, 39.8 will be, I said that we would be at 40 trillion by the end of August. I bet you that we're going to have maybe 10 or 15 days left in August when we hit $40 trillion. This is the Trump administration is, hasn't cut down the spending. All of the spending and increasing of our debt happened under these people. They started the process over the last 25 years. I've shown you. I mean, you can look at the charts. You can even go back on the debt clock here and go back. It says time machine right here. You can go back to 2000. 2000, the national debt was under $6 trillion. On this day in the year 2000, the national debt was under $6 trillion. Now it's getting ready to hit $40 trillion by the end of this month. These guys did it. Trump's not slowing it down. Trump's continuing it. This is one of the crises that we've talked about, but this is the public treasury that Alexander Fraser Tyler is talking about here from the moment that the public realizes if you have a pure democracy and direct democracy, from the moment that the public realizes that they can vote themselves. So what's going to happen? What the public is being sold is that the reason that this is the way that it is because the rich are not paying their fair share in taxes. This is what they've been told. This is what Bernie Sanders is saying. This is what DSA is saying. That the reason that we're $40 trillion in debt is because the rich aren't paying enough in taxes. And we want socialized medicine, and we want to increase taxes and the burden of taxes for people to pay for it. This is what they're saying. This is what Alexander Fraser Tyler is talking about here from the moment that the public realizes that they can vote themselves. Generous gifts, large S, from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidate who promises the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result being that every democracy finally collapses due to loose fiscal policy, which always followed by dictatorship. That's what they want. They want dictatorship. So I'm telling you that these people they're creating the conditions for the rise of Marxism. They created the debt on purpose. This wasn't an accident. The creating of this debt. They're doing it. It's a loot job. It's transfer. It's wealth transfer. This money comes out of the public treasury and this money goes into private hands, and the people that this money's hands go into in the private sector become rich, and it's transferred wealth from the public treasury into the private hands. This is what's going on, people. So we had the election this week of Abdul El-Sayed. He don't let you saying his name. Oh, don't say my name. Bro, that's your name. Abdul El-Sayed won this week in Michigan. I knew that he was going to win the nomination for the Democratic primary. He's the Democratic nominee for the Senate. You can see him here with his buddy Hassan Piker. Hassan Piker is Jake Uger from the Young Turks, from the Young Ottoman Turks show. That's his nephew. They're Muslim and they're communists. They're both Muslim and they're communists. And I have the list of crises that we've already identified. We have identified the election crises. We've identified the education crises. We've identified the debt crises. We've identified the treason crises. And then we've identified the racial tribalism crisis, which we're going to elaborate more on today. The rise of Marxism. This all pertains to the rise of Marxism. But I will be adding Islam to this list. I'm going to do a series. I've done the series of podcasts on Judaism. We spent months talking about the Jews, and then we got into Christianity. I feel that I need to do a show and a series of shows on Islam and add Islam to the list, because the rise of Islam is a crisis. But the rise of Islam, I'm starting to believe is happening in that the rise of Islam has something to do with the rise of Marxism. Is what I'm getting to. That they're connected. The rise of Islam in the United States, but not only in the United States, in the West, has something to do with the rise of Marxism as well. But we're going to add the rise of Islam to the list because people need to know there's a lot of gaslighting going on right now. A lot of gaslighting and people talking about, Islamophobia being part of this campaign and all this stuff. Yeah, you should be, have a phobia about Islam. Phobia means irrational fear. No, you should have a very rational fear of Islam. And we're going to get into it, and I'm going to explain to you historically, why you should have a rational fear of Islam. It's not a phobia at all, but you should be very concerned with the rise of Islam. And there is this marriage that seems to be going on. I kind of, I've been hearing about the Red-Green Alliance for a long time, and I kind of didn't want to talk about it. I'm studying it. I'm still studying it. I'm still, thinking about this idea, to be quite frank with you, that when I first heard about the Red-Green Alliance and heard people talking about it, there was a lot of Zionists and neocons that were promoting this. So, I was asking myself, can I, because it doesn't make any sense at all that Marxists and Islamists would have an alliance, to me, because they're so antithetical to one another. But I'm starting to look into this Red-Green Alliance and starting to buy it. I really am. And I have a couple of clips that talk about the Red-Green Alliance. If you haven't heard about the Red-Green Alliance, it's this new theory that a lot of people are talking about in online spaces and in the media. And I want to explain what it is and explain why I am starting to buy it. Why I'm starting to buy it. All right, so this is the first clip. It goes into a little bit about what the Red-Green Alliance is. It's pretty objective, so take a listen.
All right, so today we're going to decode a pretty controversial theory that's been making the rounds in some media circles. It's this idea of a hidden alliance that's supposedly working to take down Western civilization right from the inside. We're going to break down the argument step by step using the source material that's pushing this view.
And right off the bat, this isn't framed as some distant political theory. No, the source presents this as an urgent, time-sensitive warning.
Right now.
It's a claim about a major threat that, according to the argument, is playing out as we speak across Europe and America.
Look at the picture here. It says it's got a picture of the Statue of Liberty, the Eiffel Tower, and Big Ben. The United States, France, the European mainland, not only France, you saw what happened in Spain last week, and England. And so this isn't just something that's happening in the United States, this Red-Green Alliance, that as I'm starting to pick it up and buy it, I'm starting to notice that, yeah, this is going on in Europe too.
According to the argument, is playing out as we speak across Europe and America.
So what's the core claim here? Well, it's that two groups you'd never expect to work together have secretly joined forces. And the theory goes even further. It suggests they're following a historical playbook that they believe has already worked before.
Okay, so to really get into this, we have to start with a key distinction, one that the entire argument really hinges on.
I don't make this distinction that he's getting ready to make, and he doesn't make this distinction either. He's saying that this is coming from the source material and the people that are theorizing about this Red-Green Alliance. I don't make this distinction.
The source material is really, really clear about this from the very beginning. Its argument is not about the religion of Islam, but about what it defines as a totally separate political ideology it calls Islamism.
Same.
And this quote right here is basically the foundation for the whole theory. It draws this really hard line between someone's personal faith and what the source is calling Islamism,
Same.
which it frames as a political movement with goals that are, by definition, just not compatible with Western life. You see how they're splitting this? It's really the core of the whole thing. On one hand, you have Islam, the religion. On the other, Islamism is defined as this political project.
And it's the same thing. I don't make this distinction, and we'll get into it when we do the podcast about Islam. There's no distinction between Islam and Islamism. It's all the same thing. They all have the same designs. Here's another clip about the Red-Green Alliance, so listen to a little bit of this.
If Islamists and the radical left have diametrically opposite values and beliefs, why do they seem to be working together all over the world?
Now that I'm starting to buy it, you start to pick it up. You're seeing it everywhere. The protests that they had in LA over immigration. You saw communist flags. You saw Palestinian flags. You saw people there waving communist flags with the Kifa scarf on. And I mean, you start to notice it now that I'm starting to put some credence into this, I'm noticing it a lot.
The radical left have diametrically opposite values and beliefs. Why do they seem to be working together all over the world? Well, our guest today, who himself is a former Muslim, says it all comes down to one mutual goal. Danny Birmawi, author of Islam, Israel, and the West, joins us now. So, Danny, why are these two entities united?
Well, the radical left, they're searching for a way to accomplish their goal, to achieve their goal. And the Islamic movement, they also have a goal. And both of them found some kind of a ground to work together. I call it the flush theory. Both of them, they flush what they disagree on in order to achieve that goal, and eventually they will clash.
So what's the goal? And then eventually, this is what this guy says too. He's getting this from the source material, that eventually that all of this is just that. What's the goal? What's the goal of the Islamists, and what's the goal of the Marxists? Where those two goals, even though that they're completely antithetical. I mean, Marxism is completely against all religions, and even the belief in a deity at all. I mean, Karl Marx said that religion is the opiate of the masses. So they're two completely antithetical ideas, but what is the thread that ties them together? And this guy explains it a little bit better here. And let's listen to more of this.
This isn't a partnership based on shared values or anything like that. It's all about pure convenience. So here it is, the core definition. The theory alleges that Reds, described as leftists, and Greens,
Marxists,
the Islamists we just defined, have united for one temporary goal, to take down Western systems. Let's look at how the theory breaks this down. You've got the Reds, defined here as Marxists and socialists, and you've got the Greens, or the Islamists.
And there's no, I mean, we've already been talking about the Marxists and their agenda going back to, the 1920s. I've spelled it out. Of course, I mean, we've played the clips of Yuri Brezhnov, we've been talking about this. Of course, this is the Marxist goal. Is there any evidence that this is the Islamist goal? Well, yes, there's plenty of evidence that this is the Islamist goal as well, that they both have the same goal of taking down Western civilization. I mean,
and Greens, the Islamists we just defined, have united for one temporary goal, to take down Western systems. Let's look at how the theory breaks this down. You've got the Reds, defined here as Marxists and socialists, and you've got the Greens, or the Islamists. Now, despite their massive ideological differences, the argument is that they're united by one single powerful thing, a shared enemy.
The source really hammers this point home. This is not about mutual respect or, coexistence. It's presented as a purely tactical team-up, built on that classic principle. The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend is the core of the alliance, the Red Green Alliance. Queers for Palestine. You wouldn't be able to understand Queers for Palestine makes no sense unless you understand the Red Green Alliance. And then you look at the letters here. Queers is in red, Palestine is in green. Red Green Alliance, Queers for Palestine. Queers for Palestine. Queers for Palestine. And again, the queers, or you got the queers in green here and Palestine in red on this picture. But Queers for Palestine. It makes no sense. Queers, free Palestine. Unless you understand the Red Green Alliance, which I'm starting to buy into. I'm starting to see a lot of this going on everywhere. The Red Green Alliance. And it made me think about this guy too. Mamdani, the Muslim mayor of New York City, who is actually a communist. He's a communist as well. Who's this right behind Mamdani in this video? This is Gustavo Gurelio is his name. Gustavo Gurelio is the co-chair of the DSA. He was on Fox just last week, admitting to all of the communist things that the DSA wants to do, their communist agenda. And you can see Gustavo right here in the background with the Muslim mayor and communist Mondami. Let's listen to Gustavo a little bit.
The problem we're facing in our housing system is that we talk about tenants and we say they have to pull themselves up by their bootstraps. They have to be responsible financially. But when we look at the landlords, we don't use those same standards. Landlords in New York have been making a 12% return on their investment on average.
What should they make? What's fair for the landlords to make if you don't like 12?
Yeah, what's fair?
They're complaining that 12 is not enough. And we don't think that anyone should have a constitutional right to double-digit returns on their investment.
So
that's why we've implemented.
Gustavo is the co-chair of the DSA, Diana Wool communist, and he's right there with the Muslim mayor. So it's not just, Abdul al-Said. It's also Mondami. It's also Hassan Piker here. You see this alliance going on, but it's also Smooth Criminal. Because I started thinking about this. I started thinking about Smooth Criminal who grew up in Indonesia, attended madrasas, said that the call to prayer was the most beautiful sound that he had ever heard, went by Barry Soetoro his entire life. This guy went by Barry Soetoro his entire life. And then when he runs for office, he begins his political career. He changes his name from Barry Soetoro. Why did you run for office as Barry Soetoro? Why did you go back to Barack Hussein Obama when you ran for president? That's part of it. That's what al-Said is doing right now. Don't say my name. Are you saying my name to scare people? We already went through this with Smooth Criminal. We already went through this, and they're going to try the same playbook. That, if you say Abdul al-Said, then you are trying to scare people. You're being Islamophobic. If you're connecting him to his most extreme views, which are communist and Islamic, if you do that, then you're being Islamophobic. Or you're being racist, is what they did with Smooth Criminal. This is all part of the playbook, people. We've done this already. We're doing this again? This guy changes his name from Barry Soetoro, which he goes by his whole life, to Barack Hussein Obama to run for office. And then he challenges anyone who criticizes his radical Marxist views. His apology tour that he does all over the world, apologizing for his cousin, even though you're going to continue the same foreign policy as your cousin, drone attacks and everything. I mean, I can't wait. We're going to get into the Islam stuff. But I want you to listen to Chuck Todd and Chris Cillizza here. And this is how they're going to play this. This is the same playbook that they did with Smooth Criminal, Barack Hussein Obama. Take a listen to this.
No, I care.
Yeah,
they're talking about al-Said here.
Exactly.
I think you're going to see a really ugly campaign against him.
Against him.
Against Abdul al-Said.
There should be an ugly campaign against him. He's a communist and an Islamist. There should be a ugly campaign against him. Chuck Todd?
I think you're going to see a really ugly campaign against him.
Against him.
Against Abdul al-Said.
Yes,
and the question is...
And then look how Cillizza agrees. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. It's going to get ugly. They're going to use his whole name and everything.
I think you're going to see a really ugly campaign against him.
Against him.
Against Abdul al-Said.
Yes,
and the question is, that's one way to try to win. I think this is the wrong cycle for Republicans to try to win that way.
When
That's
you
all
say ugly, let's just put a name to it. Do you think it's going to be like this guy's a terrorist kind of stuff?
I think there's going to be a ton of Islamophobia.
He's terrorist adjacent for sure. I mean, we could say that. This guy said that the United States deserved 9/11. This is what this guy said. Now, I don't believe Muslims did 9/11, but, this guy said that. This is what he said. The United States deserved 9/11. I I mean, he said some other awful things too. He's venerated Chairman Mao. It says Chairman Mao was a great leader. This guy right here, who's right next to Abdul al-Sayed. So he's there, definitely terrorist adjacent. Chris?
Cycle for Republicans to try to win that way.
When you say ugly, let's just put a name to it. Do you think it's going to be like this guy's a terrorist kind of stuff?
I think there's going to be a ton of Islamophobia.
Islamophobia. And his name does not help, right?
I mean, and his name doesn't help.
I hate to say it, folks, but I know
his name is Barry Soetoro. He said Barry Soetoro. He went by Barry Soetoro his whole life. Chuck Todd, Barack Hussein Obama. Yeah, Barack Hussein Obama changed his name to Barack Hussein Obama just before he ran for or started running for office, buddy.
It's a terrorist kind of stuff.
I think there's going to be a ton of Islamophobia.
Yeah.
And who did the most? Who started the Islamophobia? If you want to call it Islamophobia, who released the pictures of him at the madrasa and started quite? It was Hillary Clinton, buddy.
There's going to be a lot of Islamophobia.
Kind of stuff.
I think there's going to be a ton of Islamophobia.
Yeah. And his name does not help. Right, I mean,
of course. Now, look, Barack
I hate
Hussein
to say
Obama,
it, folks, but I know Barack won. I know Barack Obama got elected.
Obama won. He did win. We're not doing that again. Hopefully, we've learned something from the Smooth Criminal, guys. Hopefully, we learned something from the Smooth. I mean, it's the same playbook, but hopefully, we as voters and as Americans don't fall for it again. Hopefully. But anyway, we'll get into Islam. We're going to add Islam to the list here as one of the crises because it is a crisis. And I'm really starting to buy into the Red-Green Alliance. It seems to be, there seems to be some credence into that alliance. And they do have a common enemy. They do have a common goal to destroy the West and the Islamists and the Marxists. The theory also goes into when they're successful that the two sides are going to turn on each other. The communists will turn on the Islamists in a final battle for who controls everything. I mean, that's why, I wasn't really buying into this theory in the beginning because, I mean, it does seem ridiculous, but I mean, yeah, it seems ridiculous, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere. The only thing that it has going for it, yes, it's a ridiculous theory, but the only thing that it has going for it is that it's everywhere. But anyway, we're going to get back into talking a little bit about a little bit more. I have a lot more to say about the racial tribalism because the racial tribalism is the mechanism, particularly black versus white, and using black civil rights struggles, the black trauma from Jim Crow and slavery, using those things to use black people as the vehicle to create conflict. This is Marxist conflict theory for the rise of Marxism. So the racial division and racial tribalism is the mechanism, the tool that they're using to create the conflict for the Marxist conflict theory for the rise of Marxism. And G. Edward Griffin, we'll listen to him again before we get started on this part of the podcast, but he says this in the 1950s.
As early as 1928, the communists declared that the racial differences among our people constituted the weakest and most vulnerable point in our social fabric. By constantly probing and straining at this one spot, they calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat.
Race war is what he's talking about here. Open combat against, having some type of race war is what he said that the communists theorized, that it was our weakest and most vulnerable point of the American society that they could exploit for the rise of Marxism.
They calculated that eventually the cloth could be torn apart and that Americans could be divided, weakened, and perhaps even set against each other in open combat. We mustn't kid ourselves into thinking that the communists have placed their agitators only into the black communities. They're working both sides of the street.
They're working both sides of the street. They have the agitators in the white community and the black community. I have some theories about who those agitators are. But some of these black agitators, are not agitating because they are, working for the secret agenda, the secret Marxist agenda of dividing the United States along racial lines and creating this kind. Some people are making a lot of money off of this racial division. And I told you that the racial tribalism comes natural. It's part of human nature. It comes natural to us. So feeding into that natural instinct to be tribal has become very lucrative in 2026. And we'll revisit the quote from Booker T. Washington. There is another class of colored people who makes a business. They make money by keeping the troubles and wrongdoings and hardship of the Negro race before the public, having learned that they are able to make a living out of their troubles. They have grown into the settled habit of advertising their wrongs, partially because they want sympathy, and partially because it pays big dollars. Some of these people do not want the Negro to lose his grievances because they do not want to lose their jobs. So this is part of it. We have what's going on in the media, which I believe is part of I'm talking about the mainstream media, which I believe is part of the grand plan, like the movies coming out of Hollywood. We talked about during the Obama administration how Hollywood pushes all these movies out about segregation and Jim Crow and civil rights and slavery, 12 Years a Slave, Selma, The Help, Django, Lincoln, all these during the Obama administration. Now that's part of the grand scheme, and they're making money on that on those movies too. But that's part of the social engineering. But these race hustlers that Booker T. Washington is talking about here, I believe that's something different, and that plays into the grand agenda. But these people are just in it for the money, and a lot of it is because what Booker T. Washington says is partially for the money, and then the other thing is it's partially because they're victims. He says that they advertise their wrongdoings partially because they want sympathy, and partially because it pays. So it's part and part. This person that we're talking about today that has 1 million followers on YouTube, or 1 million followers on TikTok, or 1 million followers on Facebook, or 1 million followers on X, and they're pushing racial division and racial tribalism, particularly the black ones. And they have them on both sides, like G. Edward Griffin says, but the Nick Fuenteses and the others are making money as well. They're all making money. But the black ones, they're doing it partially because they want to remain victims. They want the sympathy of being a victim, is what Booker T. Washington says. And the other part is because it pays. So those are the people that we're talking about today. And these people have really latched on to this Nolan Wells story. I mean, I feel so bad for that Carmelo Anthony kid, because they dropped him like a bad habit. As soon as this Nolan Wells story came about, they dropped Carmelo Anthony. Everybody was talking about Carmelo Anthony, this kid that was convicted in McKinney, Texas, after he had stabbed a white kid and killed him. Everybody was talking about that, and justice for Carmelo Anthony. We need to get Carmelo Anthony out. And all of these grifters, all these race grifters with their TikTok pages, with their YouTube pages, with their Facebook pages, with their X accounts, on all the different platforms, all they wanted to talk about was Carmelo Anthony. And then when this happened over the 4th of July weekend, then they just dropped Carmelo Anthony, like, Carmelo who? Everybody is focusing on this Nolan Wells case and grifting off this Nolan Wells case. And I mean, so many people are grifting off of this and making money off of this, putting out tons over the past 5 weeks since this tragedy happened. The content that people are putting out getting millions of views, making tons of money. These are the people that Booker T. Washington is talking about. And it's all part of politics, people. There's a lot of political play in this as well. And one of the people who is grifting off of it the most is Don Lemon. Don Lemon. Remember Don Lemon from CNN? Well, now he's got a YouTube page. He's got 1 million followers, over 1 million followers on YouTube. You can look at his content over the last 5 weeks. This one, we're going to watch a little bit of this one, but the rise of the black digital sellout. Don't be a sellout. And so Don Lemon interviewed this guy who is from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, and this guy just wrecked Don Lemon. We're going to look at it in a moment, but he interviewed this guy just the other day. But look at all this Nolan Wells content over the last 5 weeks that Don Lemon just grifting, making all this money off of. He's got tons of advertisers paying him millions. This is who Booker T. Washington is talking about here. Booker T. Washington is talking about Don Lemon. That Don Lemon is grifting off Nolan Wells, and he wants to be a victim. He wants to remain in this victim state where he gets sympathy for being a victim. But he's also making tons of money. Partially because he wants to be a victim, partially because he's making tons of money. Nolan Wells, timeline revealed. Nolan Wells update, Don Lemon, and this is one with his friend Sonny Hostin. I got some clips of Sonny Hostin we're going to play in a moment. But these are all race grifters. He brings his friend D.L. Hughley on to talk about Nolan Wells. New Nolan Wells audio, smoking gun. Look at this. Just all known here. Let's go to his live. Let's look at live here. Breaking. Friends hire ex-Trump lawyer Nolan Wells. Exclusive. Target audio expert, Nolan Wells. Brandon Tatum, Nolan Wells. So he's been grifting. Don Lemon is one of these people who's been making tons of money grifting off this Nolan Wells story over the last 5 weeks. But he got wrecked. He got wrecked the other day when he interviewed that gentleman with the beard that I showed you a picture of that is in his Chiron here. Who is from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. And we'll listen to a little bit of the Cartier family, the Cartier brothers that I told you about. This is another very popular podcast of black men that are reaching, conservative black men that are reaching other conservatives. The one that Secret Service Sam said, these guys are goofy. They're not reaching anyone. Yeah, if they're not reaching anyone, then why are you mad? You can see right here, this video that they just put out today talking about Don Lemon getting wrecked by this guy from Ocean Springs has already almost 70,000 views. So you're reaching someone, Secret Service Sam. But I'm going to let them, I haven't even watched this. We'll watch a little bit of this and we'll just break down what happened to Don Lemon this week on this podcast. And I'll just bring you on. So Don Lemon's been grifting off Nolan Wells for the past 5 weeks. Anyone who he can bring on and try to make part of the story, he's been bringing on. He brought on the audio expert. He's been bringing on everyone because he's making tons of money. He's getting tons of views by talking about this. So this guy is a barber in Ocean Springs, and he claimed to have cut Nolan Wells' hair. So Don Lemon's all, let's get this barber on, this black barber from Ocean Springs. He's going to agree with me about how racist everything is. And he's going to feed into my, racial tribalism narrative, but that's not what happened. I don't know where the Cartier family and where these guys are going to go with it, but let's just take a listen here.
So a family friend of Nolan Wells, and he knew everybody in this town, just cooked the whole case. He knew the family, he knew these kids, and look what he said to basically all the liberals and freaking ass Don Lemon.
And his stepfather, we still work out in the same gym together right now. And I came to know Nolan through his, she had this lady babysitting him, and I'm real good friends with her son, Bingo. And they would bring him around, bring him to my barbershop all the time. And I gave him his first haircut. And we used to have him to say every time he would leave, we would say, "What's your name?" And he would say, "Nolan Wells." And we all used to laugh at it. We used to make him say his name every single time, man. He was a funny little kid, man. That was what was up, though.
Yeah. And over the years, you watched him grow up?
Yeah, I watched him grow. I didn't see him for a period of time. And then he became a football player. And I used to go to his games and watch him play all the time. And, you know, and his dad was a football player as well out of Morris Point. He went up to Mississippi State. And so I knew he was going to be a stellar athlete. You know what I'm saying? His dad working with him every day the way he was, you know.
All right, let's fast forward.
It's still.
You have to just hold up a mirror so that you can see what's happening, because sometimes you're too close for the forest to see the trees. All right.
Okay.
So I'm not saying that doesn't exist, that people shouldn't feel that way, but I think that people should have an open mind about it.
This is a crazy interview. It's a crazy interview. I guess this isn't the right clip to play because I don't want to hear them talking over it. I just wanted you to hear what this guy and how contentious this interview gets, because this guy's not feeding into the racial tribalism. As a matter of fact, he's telling Don Lemon that, look, I think I have another clip. Let's see if I have it someplace else. All right. We're going to listen to Black conservative perspective, his breakdown a little bit here.
I'm so serious, right? I don't understand how this is legal, right? I really don't understand how stuff like this is legal in this country, right? At the very least, it's very morally wrong. It is very morally wrong. The ethics behind this is just, it's terrible. It really is.
So I'm going to show you hold on, before we go, I'm going to show you that this guy, Black conservative perspective, he's a Black conservative, you know, like myself, like the Carter brothers who have a large following. Black conservative perspective has 1 million subscribers. I mean, this guy gets tons of views. He's reaching tons of people. I'm sure that these people, the Carter family, that they have, how many followers they have? They have over 100,000 on X. I'm not sure how many they have on their YouTube page. But Don Lemon, I'm going to show you how Don Lemon has a problem with Black podcasters, Black commentators speaking out and being conservatives and taking the opposite side of this. And so this guy just really wrecked Don Lemon. I just want to play a little bit of this.
Jail. I'm so serious, right? I don't understand how this is legal, right? I really don't understand how stuff like this is legal in this country, right? At the very least, it's very morally wrong. It is very morally wrong. The ethics behind this is just, it's terrible. It really is.
Go ahead.
Okay. Now, look, I'm from Louisiana, so I know there's lots of mix. I mean, we are all, that's what Creole and mulatto is about. We've been mixing it up.
So this guy tells him that Ocean Springs is not racist. He says that it's not racist because you have, biracial kids running around like Nolan Wells, tons of interracial couples running around that were not racist. So he lives there. He went to Nolan Wells Field. So when he starts telling Don Lemon that this area that you've never been to, and you and Ben Crump and Al Sharpton are coming down here stirring up racism, that this is not a racist community. This is a Black man saying this is not a racist community, the community that I live in. And Don Lemon is having a big problem with that. He has a big problem with that. So the interview that starts off, this friendly Black man that cut Nolan Wells' hair, I want to get his perspective, starts to become contentious when he starts refuting Don Lemon's narrative that just because it's Mississippi, that it has to be racist, and racism is involved with this kid's death.
We invented mixing it up in Louisiana. So I understand what you're saying. But that doesn't end racism. Sometimes it heightens it, right? Because then there's a hierarchy, and then there's colorism. And then people say, well, I can't be racist because I'm married to a white person or whatever, or I'm married to a Black person. And we know that.
Well, let's not forget about the racism that comes from Black people against people who are not fully Black, right? You can't forget that either, Don, right? It kind of goes both ways, okay? Goes both ways.
Not true. The other thing that sounds like, though, and I just want to put this here, I'm not trying to insult you, is like, you sound. It kind of sounds like back in the civil rights movement when people would say these outside agitators are coming here and telling us what to do, and we don't want race mixing here.
Yeah, but we're not in a civil rights movement anymore, bro. That's why you have to go back to, when he says you sound like back in the civil rights movement, but we're not in the civil rights. I wish I could play more of this. I think actually Don Lemon took this interview off of his page. Anyway, it gets really contentious because this guy is telling Don Lemon, you're wrong, that this has nothing to do with race. And this guy who is making tons of money and tons of views off of pushing racial tribalism over the last 5 weeks, in this Nolan Wells case, he refused to admit that or to buy this gentleman's lived experience who lives in Ocean Springs, Mississippi, that it has nothing to do with race and the community's not racist. All right. So after that, Don Lemon goes on to, first of all, he does this show the next day by himself, and where he addresses this interview. Like I said, I believe that I couldn't find the actual interview on Don Lemon's page anymore. I believe that he took the interview off, which if that's the case, that says a lot. But he comes on the day after that interview and he addresses this gentleman and the interview that he has. I want you to listen to a little bit about what he says here.
So yesterday, a man came on the show. His name is Emmanuel. And listen, this is not, look, I'm not trying to disparage him. I'm trying to open up a bigger conversation about this. So yesterday, Emmanuel came on my show claiming that he knows the Wells family. He gave Nolan his first haircut and has been close to the people around this case for years. Now, look, the Wells family says directly that he is not their friend, that he doesn't know Nolan or them like that, and he doesn't speak for them. So, look, Emmanuel wasn't simply offering memories about Nolan. He was presenting himself as someone with perhaps some special access, saying, I know the dad and all that.
He showed in the interview, he holds up the obituary of Nolan Wells' funeral. He's showing, there's a picture of Nolan Wells on the front of the obituary. He was at the funeral. He described who was in the church there at the funeral. All right, Don Lemon, were you at the funeral?
Someone who knew the family, someone who knew the people involved, someone whose perspective carried weight because of those relationships. The family says it doesn't. Now, look, all of us should stop, right, and think about things before we start accepting anything he says about this case. One, because of what the family said.
Notice what Don Lemon did. Don Lemon brought this guy onto his show to tell stories about cutting Nolan Wells' hair. He thought that he was going to feed into his racial tribalism. When he challenged Don Lemon on the fact that the community is not racist and this doesn't have anything to do with race, Don Lemon deletes that interview. I believe he deleted it off of his page because I can't find it anymore. And then he comes on and he does this show the next day talking and discrediting the guy and saying, oh, the guy didn't know Nolan Wells. If he didn't know Nolan Wells, why didn't you do that research before you brought him on? No, you're mad because he didn't feed into your racial tribalism narrative.
The family says it doesn't. Now, look, all of us should stop, right, and think about things before we start accepting anything he says about this case. One, because of what the family says. But let me just say this. I'm not saying everything that Emmanuel said is false. I don't know that. I don't know what form the relationship he has with the family. I don't know that. I know what the family says and I know what he says. Neither do you. You don't know. Credibility still matters here, though. So that's why I'm pointing this out.
This guy's
and
such
credibility
a clown.
Around him as well. When you step into the middle of one of the biggest stories in America.
You brought him on your show, bro. You've been stepping in the middle of it for the past 5 weeks. That's all your content has been. So he goes on here. Of course, racism. You can see the title here. Of course, racism still exists. Don't be a sellout. That's the title. Of course, racism still exists. So he does this show the next day, trying to explain away what this gentleman had told him. No, the community's not racist. Then he brings Charles Coleman on the day after that to kind of comfort him because Don Lemon has very low self-esteem. Don Lemon has very low self-esteem, so that's why he has to bring the D.L. Hughley's on, the Charles Coleman's on to reinforce that I'm not wrong here, right? Racism still exists. look at the title again. Don Lemon, beware of the rise of the digital sellouts. Who's he talking about? The digital sellouts. He's talking about people like Black Conservative Perspective. He's talking about people like the Carter brothers here. He's talking about Brandon Tatum. He's talking about the many Black conservatives that are promoting Black conservatism in digital spaces. So look at the title. Beware of this. So this is 2 days after interviewing the guy with the beard in Ocean Springs. He comes on and does the monologue the next day, explaining why racism really does still exist. And, this guy's lived experience in Ocean Spring, Mississippi is wrong. And then he brings Charles Coleman on again to discuss this guy from the interview who he took down off his page. Take a little listen to this.
Seeing the interview at first, I was like, I saw the clip. And then I was like, oh, okay, I gotta go watch this interview. And so I watched the interview, and I was just like, okay. Look, the idea that there is.
But go ahead, you were gonna chew me out. Go ahead, chew me out.
Because in that moment, I was like, Don, now you know better. You know that this man cannot have this type of comment and not be challenged on the absurdity of the idea that copulation between races or interracial copulation somehow is an indication that racism no longer exists.
That's why I asked you if you saw.
So this is the part. So the guy from Mississippi says, look, we're not a racist community anymore. There's all these interracial couples. There's all these biracial kids. Nobody cares about that anymore. So the argument that they're making here is just because you have a white, if you're a Black person and you have a white spouse, that doesn't mean that you're not racist or that your white spouse isn't racist, which is really interesting because Don Lemon's spouse, if you call him his spouse, I don't call him his spouse, his friend, his special friend is white. His white special friend who beats his cheeks is white. Does that mean that your white special friend could be racist? That doesn't mean that he's not racist? Is that what you're saying? That's the argument that they're making here. So that's the argument they're making, again, refuting this guy's interview, who I believe he's taken down off of his page.
Oh, the interview, because I did.
Yeah, you did. No.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying. Right. I saw the social media clip, and gotcha. And that's when I went, and I was like, Don. And then I went and saw the interview, and I was like, okay. All right, cool. And then you also went back again, which I appreciated, on social media, and also addressed it. So both of those things I was thankful for, because I saw the interview, then I saw the other social media clip you did in your car, and I was like, okay, dude, he's clearly addressing this, which is responsible journalism. Like to be honest, guys, everybody who's watching,
this guy, I want to point out Charles Coleman, he's the one who Stephen A. Smith he brought on to do a debate with Brandon Tatum a few weeks ago, and it was absolute train wreck, quite frankly, because these people are perpetual victims. They're exactly what Booker T. Washington talks about, that they're making money off of victimhood, and they get to play the sympathy card. That's why they can't let the racism go. That's why they have to manufacture racism. You think about stories like Jussie Smollett and the Southern Poverty Law Center, being indicted under federal charges of cooking up racism because they can't find racism is so rare in 2026 that you have to have Jussie Smollett cook it up. You have to have the Southern Poverty Law Center, pay these racial groups to be racism because they can't find any authentic racism in 2026. These people are disgusting.
There is a very big difference between sensationalized and responsible. The interview that I was on, or the debate or whatever that I had with Brandon Tatum, that was sensationalized journalism. What Don did in that interview was responsible journalism. And I'll say that to anyone because it means pushing back on something that's absurd. Yes, you might have a perspective, but I'm not just going to sit here and allow you to suggest that without challenging the veracity of it, because it's absurd on its face. And so,
so anyway, I want to play a little bit more of here. Let's listen a little bit. No, let's get into his ad. But yeah, so this was yesterday that he brought Charles Coleman on to give him a pat on the back and reinforce his racial tribalism after this guy from Mississippi had completely wrecked him in the interview. And then today he brings on Eddie Glaude. from MSNBC or MS Now. Eddie Glaude, and he brings him on to talk about this interview that he did 3 days ago that he had taken off of his page now. And then look at the title. Nolan Wells tragedy exposes sunken place sellouts. Nolan tragedy exposes sunken place sellouts with Eddie Glaude Jr. Listen a little bit of this.
Difficult questions. So James Baldwin would say, they can't believe what I say is happening to me. They can't believe what we say that's happening to us around the police. They can't believe what we're saying is happening to us when we walk into banks. They can't believe what we're saying that's happening to our children in public schools, because to believe it requires a kind of honesty with what they are complicit in, right? So the fact that we can say to folks, a district attorney would have arrested all of those black kids if a white boy didn't return.
You don't know that.
Exactly. But the fact that denial comes is to deny our experience.
Right.
It's to deny
what we have
come to, what can become to be described as a kind of racial common sense. Right. So, because to concede it is to concede something about themselves.
It's complete mumbo jumbo.
So it can't be true. So Baldwin will say in Many Thousands Gone, I have to wash myself.
These people are
wash my face blank.
Pseudo-intellectual. Nothing that this guy just said makes any sense. And it's not deep at all. It's not profound at all. It's mumbo jumbo.
Right. So it can't be true. So Baldwin will say in Many Thousands Gone, I have to wash myself. I have to wash my face blank in order to wash away your guilt. That the precondition for my entree in the world is that I have to leave the particularity of my experience at the door so that you can be white without judgment.
No, it wasn't the white guy challenging this narrative of Ocean Springs, Mississippi. It was a black guy challenging the narrative of Ocean Springs, Mississippi being racist. So, I mean, your narrative, Eddie, is completely wrong. It's not a white guy saying that you have to leave your experience at the door. This is a black guy saying, look, I'm black. I live here in Ocean Springs. That's not my experience.
In the world is that I have to leave the particularity of my experience at the door so that you can be white without judgment.
Wow.
And so
there's nothing profound about that at all. Don Lemon sits back and says, wow, you just blew my mind with that. Oh my God. These people are ridiculous. But then I want you to watch what goes on here. Take a listen. This is all pertaining to this interview with this guy from Ocean Springs telling Don Lemon, and look, we're not racist. It's not racist. The people here are not racist. I have friends that are white. Everybody mixes like Nolan Wells did. Everybody has a good time. We're not a racist community. Don Lemon, he wasn't ready to hear that.
My experience at the door so that you can be white without judgment.
Wow.
And so when we bring the wealth of our experience, so it makes sense, common sense to black folk. They're supposed to be friends and they left him out there. He didn't come back.
Yeah, they left him out there because he wanted to stay, idiot. Yes, they're supposed to be friends. They yelled at him and they said, get on the boat, come back, come on, we have to go. The boat's sinking, we're taking on water. He said, no, I want to stay. What are they supposed to do? Jump off the boat and tie him up and put him on the boat like he's a slave? Is that what they're supposed to do? And they didn't leave him out there by himself. There were hundreds, if not thousands of other people out there with him on a holiday. This guy doesn't even know the facts of the case.
They're supposed to be friends and they left him out there. He didn't come back. And then you draw on Emmett Till and you draw on all the stuff.
Then you draw on Emmett Till. Then you draw on Emmett Till. Who told you to draw on Emmett Till? What are you drawing on Emmett Till for?
Back. And then you draw on Emmett Till and you draw on all the stuff that has made us who we are. It seems and of course people are the conspiracy theories are through the roof. But still.
And watch this. Watch this.
You're right, because I tried to say that to this gentleman. I don't want to keep harping on him, but I said...
Yeah, you want to keep harping on him. That's the whole reason. You've been harping on him all week from the beginning of the week when you did that interview with the guy from Ocean Springs. That guy wrecked you. And everything that you've done all week since that interview has been doing repair work to try to repair your racial grievance and your racial tribalism narrative. So, yes, that's why you keep harping on him. But watch what he does here.
Of course, people are the conspiracy theories are through the roof, but still.
No, you're right, because I tried to say that to this gentleman. I don't want to keep harping on him, but I said, look at the history of the country. Yeah, Emmett Till did happen in Mississippi, and you don't understand why race is a part of it. This is, I want to know.
I watched this one guy, and he was saying, yeah, look at the history of Mississippi. And he was saying, oh, so Mississippi can't change? He said, look at the history of the Democratic Party. I hit the floor when I heard that. He said, yeah, look at the history of Mississippi. Mississippi can't change. This is somebody else, another podcaster that I was watching. He said, look at the history of the Democratic Party. If Mississippi is forever scarred by their history, why isn't the Democratic Party forever scarred by their history, Don Lemon?
Happened in Mississippi, and you don't understand why race is a part of it. This is, I want to know, when you look at this picture.
Now
right?
Watch what he does here.
When you look at this picture.
This is insane. These people are insane.
I wonder what you see and what other people see.
If I saw it without knowledge.
So this is the picture. So he shows this picture to Eddie Glaude, whatever his name is. The picture that went around with Nolan Wells with his friends on 4th of July. I don't even know if this picture is from 4th of July, but him hugging his friends that he loved. You know, 3 of them are white. He's black, but that obviously didn't matter to them. They were still friends. And he shows this picture because this is the picture that they all hung on in the beginning to create this racial narrative about a community that is not dealing with racial strife, a community that is not racist at all, according to the guy who lives there. But he shows this picture to Eddie, like, I mean, for what? What is this supposed to, what did this stir up in you, Don Lemon? You're going to tell me that Don Lemon hasn't been the only black person in the room before? Don Lemon and his white husband have never hung out with another, white couple, and he's the only black guy. That's never happened to you, Don Lemon? You acting like that's strange for Nolan Wells to be hanging out with 3 white friends? This is completely ridiculous, people.
That Nolan Wells is dead. What would I see? First thing, they look like they've been drinking. But why is that boy? Well, he should be careful. He should be careful.
He should be careful. He can't be out there by himself. He wasn't by himself, idiot. Oh my gosh. I wish I could share more. I have a lot more than I want to share. We'll pick it back up on Monday. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Monday.